pray this, and everyone said, amen. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Eric. I hope you take that seriously and try to understand how to take space to be with one another and to be with God. We're just going to take a few moments to talk about our first fruits opportunity. I'm going to ask Matt Thomas to come on up here. Matt is the chair of our deacon board, and so our deacons are responsible for facilities and for finance. And I know you hear me talk a lot about things like that, but I want to give Matt an opportunity to share. So, Matt.
Good morning. Eric said it's going to be about 8 or 10 minutes, but I got about an hour, so hope everybody's got some time. Ken did say he'd do an interpretive dance the whole time, so we'll look forward to that. I wonder what the visual pictures are there, but I've been on the deacon board now for maybe almost 2 years, and as a part of my profession, I put budgets together and implement them. And honestly, I can say that I didn't appreciate everything that goes on at church until we started kind of digging through that as a board. So, I mean, if you think about it, we've got bright lights on, it's air conditioned, there's painting, roofing. I think we have 58 HVAC units on this campus. There's endless things, repairs, taking out the trash. You know, I can go on and on. Fortunately, and I don't know if he's here, but David Otis, of anybody who knows him, that guy has his hands in all of this stuff and somehow makes it all work. We get, as a part of our deacon, yes. Is David here? I don't know if he is or not, but okay. So, but as a part of our deacon meetings each month, he writes a report, and honestly, it kind of looks like a MacGyver script as he's kind of going through and talks about obsolete parts that he's made himself to make things continue, or repairing the elevator with gum and duct tape. So you've been warned on that. We also are fortunate, and I think Gary usually sits over there. I don't see him, but Gary manages all of the budgets, and they're endless, what we have here at church. And obviously you can appreciate the bigger things, but even down to, as we went through the budget and looked at it, I mean, there's finite things such as crayons and supplies for the kids to donut holes and all those kinds of things, making sure there are funds for all this stuff. So really, we can applaud both those guys and thank them for allowing all this to continue, because it's a lot of work. And so thank you to Gary and David both. So as we looked at the budget as deacons, I was all ready with my red pen, and I put a bib on. I was ready to start crossing things out. And truly and honestly, there's really nothing to cross out. I mean, we looked at everything, and again, I'm not kidding when you look at some of these little fine items of a couple $100 for a year, and there's nowhere to cut anything. And we talked about it, and we looked through it all, and it really, not to oversimplify it, but we simply just need to raise some more money. And we're all aware of what costs have done in our personal lives and everything, and that's obviously happening here at church too. So it's simply we need to raise some more money. And so I would just encourage you to seek God in everything you do. Seek Him in your finances, your giving. But I also want to thank you all for everything that, I mean, we have a building to come to. There's lights on us, maybe too much on my balding forehead. But we're super blessed to have what we have here. And that's because of all your generosity. So thank you for that. You not only support our campus here, but you support local and worldwide missions as a part of your generosity. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. And just to let you know, along with this First Things series, we are going through First Fruits. And you, as Eric mentioned, you received a card, and these cards are available for you on the foyer, on the tables as well. And our invitation is for you, as Matt said, to go before God and to ask, like, God, what are you inviting me to do with my finances? And the one thing that we're asking everybody, and I know everybody can't do it, but we're asking everybody to consider increasing their current giving by 10%. So if you give $100 a month, $110. If you give $500, go to $550. And if all of us do that, we will exceed what the need is and be able to do other ministries that God has before us. There's a lot of other things here, like if you haven't been giving, to consider starting to give, to pray for the church, to take some classes on finances, because we understand that that's not real commonly taught in our day today, and some of you are finding yourselves overwhelmed by the day-to-day costs of living, and how do I adjust my life so that I actually can be generous and experience the joy in that. We talk about there's places to consider estate giving, all those types of things. So, and then also the last thing is, as Matt said, we have a lot of maintenance stuff that's going on. And so if you would consider a gift above and beyond your regular tithe, we have about $400,000 worth of maintenance, deferred maintenance issues, air conditioning units, fire systems, and we would like to try to move in that direction as well. So we want you to fill this out, and every one of you to drop it into one of those glass jars, just as a sign of your commitment and our commitment with one another. So before I release you, I just want to open up the time to any questions that Matt or I or anyone else might be able to answer. So any questions that you have out here. And don't be afraid to ask them, because if you have them, somebody else probably does. Julie. Yeah, I mean, I think what happens with the what if, from my perspective, is it's typically a staff issue. We would have to lose a staff person because there's no other place to cut. And the reality of that is unsettling to me because of just the load all of us are carrying already. So that's probably the reality. Matt, you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I agreed. And also, and they probably won't proclaim this, but the staff has taken, for a period of time, no increases and or minimal increases. So in light of everything that's gone on in society and the increases that we all take on in our personal finances, Ken and everybody else has decided to be very, what's the best way to say it, conservative or sacrificial is honestly probably better in how they've done it. So there really isn't much other areas to cut. And I wasn't kidding when I said I went through this budget, and there are line items of like $300, and I'm like, that doesn't even cover the stuff that they're looking at. So the what if, that's a great question, but you know, as Ken said, there can be small little sacrifices that we can all make that would make the what if just go away. So.
Thanks, good question. It's probably the one we're all asking. Yeah. Other questions that you might have out here? Bob. Yeah, so the amount, the $400,000 for upgrading maintenance, is that immediate need or is it over the next year? Yes to both of those. In that we can't do it until the monies are raised, but it does have to be done. So the fire system, probably within the next year. David is still working on that. We have some AC units that need to be replaced, especially on this building. And what happens is, as he said, David is having to MacGyver these things together, and at some point it's a decreasing return. Like at some point you just have to replace the units, both for energy efficiency and for simplicity as well.
Yeah, and state guidelines. I mean, you know, like we've got incandescent lights here that are being eliminated or have been eliminated, and it's not as easy as just screwing in a different light bulb. It's a whole new system. So those things, again, ignorantly, that even though I do that as a profession, I didn't even think about it when I came in here and sang a few songs and listened to Ken and then went home. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on that really is involved in trying to maintain this campus. So.
Yeah, and I would say that with the fire system, I mean, there's upwards of $200,000 that we have no choice to do. It's just been placed upon us by our. It's kind of the cost of doing business in California. Jim in the back. Yeah, so the statement was hourly wages have gone up. And so the state, we have to stay up with those. And the answer is yes. We have to continue on like any other organization would. And so it's minimum, you know, we have to pay obviously minimum wage and then also a working wage as well. And so that means with the non-exempt employee, as all of you know, in other words, if you're non-hourly because you work odd hours or you work more than 40 hours, which is most pastoral staff, that ends up being you have to make the double minimum wage. That's a California law, and it's what we need to do. Okay. Yes. Yeah, so how do we decide? We have 20% of our funds are earmarked towards world missions and then or towards missions. And then what happens is the missions committee has a grid that they go through that determines reaching unreached people to local ministries. And then they try to foresee who's retiring or what's leaving or what's changing. And we continue to hold that fairly close to I don't want to say a formula, but it's a decision that the missions committee has made long ago so that our focus is on reaching the unreached. So that's how it is now. And they're in the process always of asking those questions. And if you have questions about that, like specifically, please talk to me or Gary. We'd love to continue that conversation. Great question. Anything else? Don't want to miss anybody. Up in the balcony, anyone? Josh, you have any questions for me? Carlene's nodding her head. Oh, okay, well, I shouldn't open that door. Yeah, so we are putting together, the question is, what about the fields? Why not sell the fields? So we are putting together a long-term group of people to have conversations about what are options for things like that. So great question, and yes, we're looking into that, whether, those are things that we may or may not be able to do. Josh? Yeah, so the question was, how does TC impact the use? You want to answer that one? Yeah.
Sure. That's not the only time I've heard that question, but well said, Josh. Best stated of that question. TC obviously being here is, going back to Hillary's question about missions, that is part of mission, but they do pay to be here. And as a part of what their lease payment, if you will, is that includes wear and tear, some dollars set aside for depreciation on HVAC and those types of things. Now that said, as we're looking at everything, we are also looking at what we need to do to make sure that that is also an updated dollar amount for them on their end as well as on our end. So we're looking at all things, selling fields if that's something. These are longer term things, but definitely TC has an impact. And we are going through it. There's an annual renewal on that agreement with them, but we're going through that to make sure that that makes sense for both parties moving forward, including dollars. So,
Kendall. Well, what we would like is there's two buckets here that are going on. You have the ongoing tithing. And again, if everybody would increase by X amount or begin to give, we would see that $135,000 to $40,000 increased throughout the whole year, which would then make our budget flush or a little bit better than flush, which then we can tend to the other, which is the maintenance things. And I would say, sometime in the next year to 18 months, we'd like to take care of some of those larger maintenance issues. Yeah, okay. I always defer to Matt. He's smarter than me. Not a good baseline. No. Tweedledee and Tweedledum up here. Okay. Anything else? Great questions. Yes. Yeah, great question. I actually just sent one away this week for Chapel Soul Care to help in bringing some scholarship for actual churches pretty much know. There are some things, we've done some stuff with senior adults that we've been able to tap into some grant money, but that money's drying up pretty rapidly. But there are some places, and we do pursue those. Sometimes they have really, really long strings to them, so we have to be cautious around that as well. But we do pursue that. Great question. I think that's some of the questions that we're putting a long-term group together to ask. How do we fund the church in the long term? And that, are there endowments? I will say that if there's some of you who have stuff that you're thinking in the future of giving to the church, long-term endowments are going to be part of that process for missions, for everything. So we have to ask different questions. We're in a new kind of environment now.
Yeah, and just one last thing. Obviously, there's constant hands out good causes for dollars, and there's limited funds. Everybody's aware of that, of course. So I just want to reiterate how much we appreciate what everybody has done, and that's really what this would be, is a thank you. And we just need to look at things a little bit differently. Obviously, in our society, people have gotten busier, church is viewed differently than it used to be, and all those things are resulting in where we're at now, and why we need to look at things differently as we haven't before with this campus, and maybe spinning off some of that or whatever. But again, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for being a part of this and for allowing people to ultimately come to know the Lord. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? Ken? Yeah, okay, so we can do that with the maintenance fund. For the regular giving, the only thing we can do is if you turn in the cards and then say, I'm going to increase by 10%, we can get an idea of that. But that one, because Gary is really the only one who knows specifically who gives what, so it's difficult to track, but we can keep you updated on that. But the way that we're going to know about the tithing is going to be whether or not you turn those cards in. That's what we're asking for. So I don't know if that's helpful, but yes, we will update it as we get as much information as we can. I asked Pam to do a look. She said that from her perspective, again, she can just look at like broad pictures, not specifics, and about 20 people had increased their giving. That means we need about 100 plus more of you people to do that. And again, I say this, I want to echo Matt's thanks as well. Like, thank you for giving. And we figure 120 family units increasing their giving, and we have somewhere close to 300 giving units, we would do fine. Yes? Yes, and if you want to talk to Ashley, we can do that, but I'll let Ashley know that as well. It's usually I see somebody in the back there. Okay, I got you. I think it's easiest for us to do because we have bulk places to order from, and then we can keep track of that. So to give and then let them the staff do that. But if you have specific things that you'd like to do, we can talk about that with Ashley. Okay, in the back. Oh, they're pointing at Ashley. Okay, where am I missing someone? In the back. So the question was, we have people out in the soccer field, do they pay to use that? No, that is a community ministry, and we have used it as such. And so Doug Anderson oftentimes will go out during a Sunday and reach out to them, bring water bottles. Dave has done that. So we view that as a ministry to our community. And it's also one of the questions we're asking, does it stay or go? So, yeah. And then one more here, maybe? Well, yeah, you can give through the church to missionaries, and that's absolutely fine, and you can do that directly. I think what I do, though, is if you earmark those funds, they do not go to general fund, and the general fund is what keeps everything going. And so I have this, years ago, I was instrumental, or I was part of that conversation to link 20% of our giving to overseas, because we saw a shift in mission, because I believe that a healthy missions program needs a healthy church, and a healthy church needs a healthy missions program. They're tied together, and so you can't entirely separate them. So I would say that, yes, you give to missionaries through our church, you can earmark that, but that bypasses general fund, and then you end up with a church that's less healthy. So that's, again, my perspective. Yes, I see Bill, I think. Yes. So here's a wise man speaking. If you give directly out of your retirement fund, you don't pay taxes on it. And there are other types of gifts in kind and stock that you can give in that way as well. If you're interested and don't know how to do that, talk to Gary. He will give you all the advice you need on that. Thanks, Bill. Do I see? Yes, Marty.
So for whoever didn't hear that, we're debt-free. Has there been any conversation about an equity loan? And again, we're willing to discuss all options. My personal opinion is no, because then, Ken can speak to this better, but the borrower becomes slave to the lender. That's not a position we want to be in, because, I can go on and on. So my personal opinion is no, we shouldn't borrow any money. So
that's kind of like putting your meals on a credit card. Eventually, you're going to have to pay for it. It doesn't look good. And so our tendency would to say no. Our general costs, we need to be able to pay for our general costs. And if we can't, we have to adjust those. You guys have great questions. Is that it? Anything else? All right. Well, I want to say a prayer, and then we will close for today. So, God, thank you so much. Again, as Matt said, thank you for each person here, for their willingness to give, for their generosity, not just in these past years, but for some for decades upon decades. And God, we know that you own the cattle on 1,000 hills, and so we trust that you are ultimately the provider of this church, for this church. And so we ask that you would speak to our hearts, that you would invite us to give that which we need to give, and that through that we would be able to see exceedingly and abundantly more than we would ever possibly ask or imagine. So thanks for those who give. Thanks for those who work hard at maintaining budgets and facilities. God, thanks for this body and for the way that your kingdom is being expanded both here and throughout the world. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for being here.